The story begins on a silent night when a boy is running to save his life. He is very injured as many people ganged up on him together, and now he needs to keep running and hide and use that time to recover. He notices a cat there and finds a way to escape, and there was a sudden flash. The next day, a boy named Jiwoo goes to the general store. He likes cats too much and always buys food for cats whenever he has extra money. He buys a lot of stuff for cats when suddenly, he sees a child rushing towards a fast-moving car. He uses his hidden powers and moves like a flash to save the kid, while the people are shocked that the boy disappeared in just a second. He almost exposed his powers to the general public, but still, it is good that he was able to keep the kid from being hurt. He then goes home and gives food to the public, but the cats are not eating and it seems like they are asking him to follow them. He follows the cats and they take him to an injured cat. Jiwoo takes him to his home, and when he gets his consciousness, the man before the last night gets that he has become a cat. He remembers that he touched the cat and transformed into it. Meanwhile, Jiwoo enters the room. He is happy that the cat is stable now and brings cat food for him. He is so talkative and continuously talks with the cat and asks him to eat the food. Kaden, the boy in the cat, smells the food and he doesn't like him but thinks he should eat up to heal more quickly. Jiwoo takes him up to check if he is a boy or a girl, and Kaden shouts at him and asks him to put him down. Jiwoo is unable to understand from where the voice is coming, and then he realizes that the cat is talking. He gets so scared by the cat when Kaden asks him his name. Moreover, he says that he doesn't like to ask a question twice. He then ordered him to bring him the chair, but it is so hard for him to climb, and thinks his body is not well so he can't even climb. He then threatens him that if he says a word about him to anyone, he will kill him. He then sees himself in the mirror and he is shocked to see that he has become a fat plum cat. He falls down and is in a state of shock that the great Kaden has turned into a puny, and he doesn't have the strength to change into another animal. He has to stay in this shameful state until he goes back. He again sees himself in the mirror and regrets why he changed himself into a fat, stupid cat. Jiwoo asks him how can he speaks like a human when he is a cat, and he replies that he is human. He looks like this now, but he is not a cat and temporarily transformed into a cat. Jiwoo asks him to eat and he again yells at him as he is telling him to eat cat food when he knows he is a human. Jiwoo tries to persuade him that he should not eat human food because it may hurt his body. After some time, Jiwoo tells him that he is going to the animal hospital to bring cat food and asks him if he will come with him and picks him up. He then takes him to the hospital and asks the doctor to check him up as he is hurt. Kaden thinks he tricked him into being there. The doctor checks him up and reveals he doesn't have any particular problem and has some scratches which can be healed soon. The doctor recommends him to put the cat on a diet, and Kaden thinks he wants to kill the doctor. On their way back home, they see a monster cat that looks more like a tiger, but his eyes are so scary. They both run to save their lives while the monster cat is following them. Meanwhile, the cat jumps on them and falls to the ground. Kaden asks Jiwoo to take out a weapon and he just has a trap rope while the cat tries to jump and grab the rope. After grabbing the rope, the monster cat again glares at them and jumps on them. Jiwoo grabs Kaden and runs with his full might and hides in a shade, and is worried that it can anyone who will pass by it. He then asks Kaden to go back, and he will do something about the cat. Kaden offers him a small portion of his powers to use in battle so that he will able to surpass the cat. He then gives him a small number of his powers and he feels power overflowing in him. Meanwhile, the monster cat reaches them and jumps on them. Kaden is shocked to see his evasion skills and that he can track and anticipate all of the cat's movements, more than that he is not even using his powers when he is dodging the cat. On the other hand, Jiwoo is trying to save Kaden's powers at the right time, and Kaden realizes that he has super speed powers. Jiwoo then uses Kaden's powers and punches him, and when he defeats him, Kaden says he was so confident during the fight because of his powers. On the other hand, a man standing in a tall building is trying to locate the sample on the tracker. He thinks he can't avoid the hunters if he has to use his powers, but he also can't let a powerful sample slip away. Come to the Jiwoo who took the monster cat home and gives him first aid. Kaden is asking him to leave him because he may wake up in that horrible form again. After that, Jiwoo talks to him about his hidden powers and Kaden reveals that he is an awakened. And there are other people too who have powers like him. Moreover, he is looking at one right now, and Jiwoo is shocked that Kaden also has special powers like him. Jiwoo gets emotional and starts crying because he always thought that he is the only weird in this world. It is his first time meeting another awakened, and when he came to know about his powers, his mother told him to never use powers. He was afraid that people would take him away to a lab and dissect him if they found out. He then asks him if he can teach him more about the awakened ones, and Caden reveals that his powers make him move fast and maybe even other special things. After a while, he gets up to bring food for himself and also gives him the food, but he doesn't like it. At night, Caden feels some weird energy coming from outside, and suddenly the monster cat gets up with a flash and runs away from the room. They are unable to understand what is happening with the cat, and Jiwoo says he will go and find him because he can attack someone else. Caden says he will also accompany him. They both run into the street to find him, and Jiwoo is using his powers, and Caden tells him that he should need good reflexes, cognitive abilities, dynamic vision on top of his speed, as an awakened should have multiple abilities. On the other hand, the monster cat goes to a man and he reacted to his imprint. He asks him about what happened to him. Also, he couldn't have broken out of his special cage. The cat seems aggressive toward the man and his energy is getting stronger. Meanwhile, Jiwoo and Caden reached there and saw the monster car with a weird man. While Caden seems to recognize the man and asks Jiwoo to hide, and reveals that the man is also awakened. The monster cat jumps and attacks the man, but he pushes the cat with just one movement of his hand. The cat again gets up and attacks him, but he tortures him again and again until he gets unconscious. Meanwhile, Jiwoo and Caden are shocked to see that he is stronger than he thought, as he is just controlling the cat's powers just by flicking his hand. He then gets up and starts torturing the cat by keeping his feet on him. Jiwoo wants to save him as he thinks the cat is weak because he fought him earlier, but Caden forbids him by saying the opponent is awakened and he is way stronger than them. After that, the cat tries to run to save his life, but the man attacks him while Jiwoo says he will not attack him but just save the cat with his powers. Caden again forbids him by saying he is awakened and his senses are not the same as normal people. Jiwoo uses his powers and reaches the cat in no time, while the man wonders where he came from and thinks he is trying to steal his sample. He attacks him, but Jiwoo takes the cat and disappeared from there, and they both run at their full might. On the other hand, the man is so aggressive that he lost his sample, and he asks his student to look for the cat. They then take the cat home, but his body has experienced significant trauma. Caden thinks there were experiments that made animals quasi-awakened, and it seems like this cat is also an experiment. This will be a dangerous case for sure. He then tells Jiwoo that he is now hostile to an awakened man and runs away with his cat. He will not ever stop chasing him until he gets it back, and even he will not hesitate to kill him. Suddenly, the alarm beeps and Jiwoo rushes toward his school. While leaving, he asks Caden to stay with him until he gets better. After some time, 3 cats enter his house, and after licking him, they start to eat the great Caden's food. He then finds the food but is unable to open the can, and after a few attempts, he opens the can. But when he is about to eat them, 3 cats again reach him and ask him for food. When Jiwoo comes home, he sees the cats sleeping in his house, and he wonders how the cats did open the cans. The next day, he sees a dream while sleeping in the class when no one played with him due to his powers. Then he made cats his friends. Suddenly, the teacher gets him up and asks him why he is sleeping in the class 2 days in a row, but he gets up and leaves the class without saying anything. He is going to home happily when a boy strikes him and leaves him without saying anything. Jiwoo remembers he is the boy who transferred to his class last month. Meanwhile, he receives a call from his sir, and he scolds him for attending the school and asks him to come to him. When the cat wakes up, he is unable to understand where he is, and when other cats come to him, he shouts so loud that they all get scared. He is then going to attack them when Caden comes in between and kicks him and asks the other cats to get away. When Jiwoo comes home, they all run toward him, and he asks Caden if he eats well and asks about the monster cat and why he hasn't woken up. Caden tells him that he woke up once right before he returned. He then lays down to sleep and tells him that he slept in the class the whole day. He then says to Caden that he is so happy to have him there and he should stay at least until he gets better. On the other side, the professor asks Woon to bring more animals for an experiment, but he says they have used all the animals they have. He then asks him to go and catch some more animals, but he reveals that people started to notice animals disappearing in this area. The police intervened as more and more reports are filed, but he gets angry and attacked him and asks him to bring animals from somewhere else. Come to Jiwoo, who is sleeping, and Caden is watching him, but it seems like he is having a bad dream. Caden thinks he is bound to have bad dreams after that horrific incident, and realizes that he is an awakened one. He didn't notice when he gets in his chest, and Jiwoo gets up due to his heavy weight. He says that he was having a bad dream and someone was choking him so that he couldn't breathe. Kaden says he will teach him how to develop and efficiently use his powers, and Jiwoo takes him to the basement of his house. He reveals that powers don't grow all of a sudden with just a couple of days of work. Instead, it takes a very long time depending on his talent and approach. He then calls him and touched his heart and says the power spreads to the rest of his body like blood, and he is going to channel his powers into him so that he can feel how powers move and grow. He touched him and Jiwoo can control the power with his method and can feel the powers moving in his body. After a few hours, he manages to channel energy through his heart. He has done everything according to Kaden's instruction while he is telling him that it will take a lot of practice and can't learn it in a few hours. Suddenly, the alarm beeps and he rushes toward the school by leaving food for Kaden and the other 3 cats. Kaden thinks he prioritizes food for the cats over eating himself and that it is the first time he has seen someone progress so fast. Maybe Jiwoo is a genius, but his method is really effective too, as he never tried to teach anyone before, which means if he teaches others awakened, they can also progress just as fast as Jiwoo. That is why the real genius is not Jiwoo. The great Kaden is the real genius. Meanwhile, 3 cats come there to attack his food and he shouts from his place to not touch his food. On the other hand, Jiwoo is again sleeping in class because he has not slept in the last 2 days. The teacher comes to him and wakes him up and leaves him again as he was a good student. Then he asks the class if anyone knows about Wooin as he is absent and not picking up his phone. On his way back home, he sees some boys bullying Wooin, and when they emptied his backpack, there is a lot of pet food in it. Jiwoo calls him and asks what he is doing there, and he recognizes him as he is his class fellow. One of the boys comes to slap him, but he dodges his all attacks, and when they notice other people watching them, they leave them. He then asks multiple questions to Wooin, but he doesn't answer any one of them. When he comes home, Kaden was not there. He checks every corner of his house to find him, but he was not there. He gets sad that he leaves him without saying goodbye and starts crying. Meanwhile, Kaden is in the bathroom and also listening to his cries. He gets angry and does not talk to him while Jiwoo is requesting him to forgive him, but he is glad that he is still there. Meanwhile, the monster cat wakes up and is acting weird. Jiwoo gently picks him up and put him in his lap. He then says they should take him to the hospital as he looks so calm now and asks Kaden to come with them. They were walking in the street when Wooin passed by them and recognizes that sample cat, but he doesn't say anything to him. Jiwoo takes him to the hospital and asks the doctor to look into him, but he says the cat is in good condition and there is nothing to worry about. But the orange car needs to lose some weight while Kaden glares at the doctor with killing intentions. The doctor reveals that somebody has left sick animals and treatment fees in front of the hospital, and they were all in dire condition. The animals have no visible wounds, but they had other problems, and they all show serious drug addiction symptoms. When Wooin reaches the professor, he informed him that he has cleaned up the animals' carcasses. He then asks the professor about the powers of the tracker he saw, and he reveals that he has super speed and dashed in front of him and ran away with the sample. Next time, whenever he sees him, he will definitely kill him. The next day, when Wooin enters the class, Jiwoo calls him and he remembers whatever the professor told him about the tracker the last night. Jiwoo asks him about his absence from school, but he again says nothing. During class, Wooin is continuously watching him and thinks if he got the special training as all the trackers received. On his way back home, he sees a cat in the street and gives him some food. Meanwhile, Wooin calls him from behind and asks him where he got that cat of his, while Jiwoo says the cat doesn't belong to him and he is just feeding him because he looks hungry. But he says he is talking about the black cat he had last night. Jiwoo reveals that he had seen the cat before. It disappeared and then reappeared. It looked very hurt, which is why he decided to look after him for a bit. Wooin says he lost his cat some days earlier, and he thought it might have been his cat. Jiwoo agrees to bring the cat to him so he may check. When he leaves, Wooin thinks if he was the tracker, then he will not be so eager to show him the cat. Jiwoo reaches home and takes the cat with him while Wooin is still waiting for him. He reaches him and asks if this is his cat, but the cat recognizes him and screams loudly as he doesn't want to go to him. Wooin asks him to hand over him the cat, but Jiwoo asks if he is sure that it is his cat and why it is acting like this. He again asks him to hand over the cat as he is putting himself in danger by keeping it, but Jiwoo refuses to give him. Wooin attacks him at his neck, by which he will be unconscious for a couple of hours, and takes the cat with him. Jiwoo gets up and Wooin is shocked that he struck him in the neck, but he is still able to stand. He asks him why he attacked him and why he is after that cat, or if he is working with the awakened one who is after that cat, and Wooin now realizes that he is the one who took the cat from his mentor. He knows Jiwoo's power is super speed and he must attack him before he reacts and falls to the ground. He again attacks him, but this time Jiwoo dodges him. Wooin thinks he is fast enough to steal the cat and get away from his mentor. Jiwoo is unable to understand what they are trying to do with the cats, and Wooin is attacking him again and again, but he dodges his all attacks and reaches him to grab the cat. Wooin predicts his attacks and falls him to the ground. Wooin thinks if he is a tracker then he should have been trained, but in this case, the opponent is clumsy and unrefined. He grabs him by his collar and asks him about whom he works for, but later realizes that he is not a tracker. He then warns him to forget everything that has happened, including the cat and his mentor. He then takes the cat to his mentor, who is so happy to see him and appreciates his work, and asks him how he found the cat. Wooin reveals that he found a man who had it and took it from him, but the man ran away. On the other hand, Jiwoo follows him and reaches the place where Wooin went in and wonders if he will be able to save the cat. Meanwhile, the professor appears there and asks him what he is looking for. On the other hand, Kaden is looking for him and reaches the animal hospital, but Jiwoo was not there either. Jiwoo recognizes him as he is awakened who hurt the cat and says him that he was just passing through. He runs to save his life, but he attacks him while Wooin is watching all this from the camera. The professor is torturing Jiwoo when Wooin calls him from behind, but the professor thanks him because he was able to find him because of him. He asks him to take care of him and he shouldn't be bothered, but the professor again flicks his hand and tortures Jiwoo. Wooin reveals that he is not a tracker and he just took the cat because he thought the professor was abusing him. The professor finds their uniform familiar and asks him if they both go to the same school, and Wooin replies he is in his class, which means he lied to him to save his class fellow. He gets angry, falls to the ground, and says he will deal with him later. Jiwoo has seen their experiment, so they can't let him live, but Wooin blocks his attack and says he will not let him kill Jiwoo. The professor becomes furious as Wooin used his powers on him and attacks him. He yells at him that he saved him from human body experiments, fed him, and gave him clothes, and this is how he repays him, but he used his powers and counterattacks him. The professor is way stronger than him and defeats him in no time and says how he dare betray him, even though his skills are so weak. Kaden is hiding in a shade and watching all this and looks for Jiwoo, who is unconscious lying there. He goes to him and tries to wake him up. On the other hand, the professor tells Wooin that he will deal him with later and first kill Jiwoo. When he turns back, he sees Kaden with Jiwoo and thinks he can do experiments on him also and should add him to his collection. Jiwoo shouts at Kaden and asks him to run away quickly, but Kaden says he will go only if he accompanies him and touched his head by saying the great Mr. Kaden will handle this. There is a great spark of light and they are shocked at where the light is coming from. Suddenly, a boy appears there and Jiwoo is shocked as he is the human version of Kaden. He just moves his hands and space isolation power surrounds all of them. The professor asks him about his identity and how can he bring electric power and so much energy, but when Jiwoo calls his name, he gets shocked. Suddenly, he apologizes to him and says he didn't know that he knows the kid, but he gives him an electric shock. He then falls to the ground in a bad condition and Kaden thinks why he is still alive and going to attack him again when Wooin comes in between and asks him who is he and requests him to spare the professor's life. Kaden wonders why he is blocking him even when he was clobbering him to death and asks him to get out of the way if he doesn't want to die with him. The professor also asks him to get out of the way, but Jiwoo forbids him and says he doesn't want him to kill someone because of him. Kaden agrees to his request and asks both of them to get away from his sight and warns them that he will kill them if he sees them again. He then takes Jiwoo and the cat home and used his powers so that he can heal a bit faster. Jiwoo is continuously laughing to see him while Kaden is getting annoyed. He says he is surprised at how cool he looks and is really strong too, and Kaden says he already told him that he is actually awesome. Suddenly, Kaden feels some strange powers and with a sudden flash, he again turns into a fat cat. He is shocked that he turns back into this and couldn't even control the change. On the other hand, Wooin took the professor to his laboratory and thinks if he had killed the kid, then Kaden must be killed him. He asks Wooin to hurriedly collect all the data and leaves this place as soon as possible. Suddenly, he gets up and again attacks Wooin for betraying him. Meanwhile, some people from the Awakened Union appear there and arrest him for conducting illegal research. He thinks they are being called by Wooin and tries to attack him again, but one of them comes forward and grabs him. They then take him with them and one of them asks Wooin to go with them too. On the other side, Kaden is sad after turning back into a cat and thinks if his strength was weakened but he should have stayed human. Or maybe he has been completely transformed into a cat and becomes a real cat. Jiwoo asks him if he figured out why he turned back into a cat, and he replies it is because he is such an impressive being and thinks he is too much like a cat now. After a while, he He thinks he should erase the fighting traces and should have a look around, and Jiwoo says he will also accompany him. Suddenly, Jiwoo receives a call and a person on the other side says he wants to give him a piece of advice. Also, this is advice from one awakened to another. He then asks him to come outside his house as he wants to meet him face to face. Jiwoo takes him outside while Kaden is glaring at him furiously. He then exclaims that he has a lot of cats and that they want to help him to live as an awakened one and shows them his awakened abilities too. Kaden recognizes him as he is in Hyuk, the famous highly ranked awakened wind ability user, and Jiwoo tells him his ability that he can move fast. Then Hyuk tells him that he should not tell his powers to anyone because all the awakened keep them secret. He then gets up and goes to leave as the point of today's meeting was to meet him and introduce himself. When he leaves, Jiwoo asks Kaden what he should do now, and he says he has to live his life as an awakened one. On the bright side, they now know that this district belongs to Hyuk. Moreover, the fun and games are over now as he has officially entered the realm of the awakened and he needs to learn how to protect himself. On the other hand, Hyuk goes to his boss and informs her that Jiwoo is not involved in the current case and he just happened to meet Wooin by chance as he transferred to his school. Moreover, he feels like they should protect him from the union as he is a nice kid and seems to be good-hearted. The next day, when Jiwoo is going to school, he wonders what had happened to Wooin as he got hurt because of him and even fought with his professor. When he reaches the class, some boys come there to bully him and ask him about Wooin. One of them kicks his broken leg and falls to the ground. Jiwoo tries to get up but they are kicking him again and again, and he is so helpless because of his broken leg and even can't use his powers. One of them comes forward and punches him but he dodges his attack, which makes him furious, and he again kicks his leg. After beating him well, now they are looking for Wooin and Jiwoo remembers he is the only one who ever fought for him. He gets up and punches one of them so hard. He doesn't need to use his powers even without using them. He is still fast. Meanwhile, the teacher enters the class and is shocked to see that Jiwoo has beaten all of them. But when he sees his broken leg, he asks the students to take him to the nurse but none of them reacts. He says he can go by himself when suddenly, he sees Kaden outside the window who appreciates him for his fighting skills. While on his way back home, he asks Kaden what was he doing there and he reveals he was concerned about him and came there to check him up. On the other hand, Hyuk shows his picture to a student and asks him to keep an eye on him. Meanwhile, the other students who fought with Jiwoo come to him and tell him about the kid who had beaten them up. On the other side, Kaden is telling him about his problems, that when he was fighting those three guys, everything was wrong except for his speed. His punches were weak, his footing was bad, and his balance was bad too. The only credit he can get is that he managed to knock them all out, and from now on, he will teach him how to improve his powers. He then gives him instructions on combat skills to use his strengthened body. The next day, he is so tired in class because he trained all night and now is yawning in class. When the teacher enters class, he was sleeping and the teacher thinks Jiwoo must be traumatized after fighting those kids, and that he should let him sleep a bit more. On the other hand, Kaden goes to the fighting place and there is not any trace left behind and he wonders who took them off. Meanwhile, he notices some people there and when they come to him, he acts like a cat. One of them says he is the fattest cat he has ever seen. When he was going home, the kids who fought him called him and one of them asks him to go somewhere else as they can't make a scene in front of the school. Jiwoo thinks they are going to take their revenge and he takes him to some quiet place. He says he wants to fight him because he beat his friends and he can't let him go because he has a reputation to maintain. Jiwoo doesn't have any option but to fight and thinks he can win again and uses his full speed to attack him, but he dodges his attack. He then holds his hand and punches him and asks him to use his awakened abilities to fight him and reveals that he is awakened too, so he should try his best to defeat him. Jiwoo asks him if Hyuk wanted to help him but why he wants to fight him. He replies he wants to figure out their ranks. His power is the wind like his master and he attacks him, but this time Jiwoo dodges his attack and then gathers his speed from his chest and channels it through the power of his punch just like Mr. Kaden taught him, but he figures him out and counterattacks him and punches him with his full might. He then again comes to attack him, but Jiwoo fails to dodge him because he is feeling pain as his leg. But he moves back by saying he doesn't want to beat someone with an injury and leaves him there. After that, Jisuk went to Hyuk and shouts at him due to his fight with Jiwoo. He told him not to do that and he gives him the reason that he beat up his friends so he had not any other option. Hyuk tries to persuade him that Jiwoo is different from him as he was groomed since birth to live as awakened and trained properly, but Jiwoo's powers have been like a curse for him and he didn't have a normal life. He then asks him what he will do if the chairwoman finds out, but Jisuk replies she will not find out until he is keep quiet, and says she has always locked herself into the office, and worked all day. Suddenly, In-hyuk expressions change because the chairwoman stands behind Jisuk and leaves the room by asking Jisuk to follow her. On the other hand, Jiwoo is upset because he has lost to Jisuk while Kaden tries to persuade him he can't win against an awakened by just training for one day. He should be thankful that he is alive, but he is upset that he has lost again without being able to do anything. Kaden then asks him if Jisuk's speed was equal to his speed and if he used the wind to attack, but he says this can't be possible. That means Jiwoo is not moving at his fastest speed, and then Jiwoo realizes that Kaden is right, and that he wasted all of his speed in just one attack. Kaden asks him if they will have a rematch when his leg is healed, then he will train him for the next match. After that, he takes him to the basement and gives him training, and asks him to use his all powers. The next day, the kids again come to beat him, but he is absent and sleeping at home. Kaden comes and gets him up and asks him to gather his abilities even when he is sleeping. On the other hand, In-hyuk tells the chairwoman that Jiwoo has not come to school after his fight with Jisuk, and maybe he gets scared by him. He then asks the chairwoman to allow him to pay him a visit. Meanwhile, Jisuk's friends inform him about the absence of Jiwoo while he is exhausted lying in his house, but Kaden again scolds him for being tired too early. Jiwoo exclaims he is not like Mr. Kaden and it is easy for someone like him, while Jaden agrees with him that if everyone like him the world can't deal with two Kaden. Suddenly, the bell rings and there is In-hyuk on the gate. He came there to apologize for Jisuk's behavior. He guesses by his appearance that he looks pale and exhausted, which means he is still in trauma, and reveals that Jisuk is the brother of the chairwoman. Also assures him that he will not bother him again. Jiwoo asks him if he can't fight that kid ever again, as he asked him for a rematch once his leg is healed, and states that he wants to try and fight him again. In-hyuk agrees and says he will set up a chance for both of them to fight. He then glares at Mr. Kaden and they both feared that if he suspects something. He asks him permission to rub the belly of that fat cat, as he really wants to rub his fat belly. After that, he goes to the chairwoman and informs him about Jiwoo's demand that he wants to fight Jisuk to check his abilities. When he gets outside, Jisuk comes there and asks him about Jiwoo, and he informs him about the fight and asks him to be prepared. Jiwoo is getting training with Mr. Kaden and his abilities are improving gradually. Finally, the day has arrived and Mr. Kaden advises him not to get nervous and that he is not fighting to the death. In-hyuk comes to pick him up and Jiwoo says he wants to take the cat with him. He takes him to the place where he has to fight and Jiwoo seems impressed by the place. He then takes him to the chairwoman's office and Jiwoo is shocked to see such a young chairwoman. They both introduce each other while Jiwoo is so shy in front of her. She then asks him why he wants to fight Jisuk when he already knows about his defeat. Jiwoo reveals that winning or losing is not important for him. It is more important for the coward he once was to find out how well he can perform. After that, they took him to the fighting ground, which is the place where Awaken trains. Jisuk has not reached there and they are also unable to contact him, but after a little wait, he comes up there. He asks Jiwoo why he didn't come to school for a few days, and he just replies he was home. Jisuk is sure that he can't beat him up after having trained for a few days. Kaden also guesses from his energy that he is pretty strong for his age, and he can now understand why Jiwoo lost so helplessly to him. In-hyuk shouts that they will start after the third beep. Jiwoo encourages himself not to be trained. After all, he trained hard with Mr. Kaden, so he has to do his best. He reaches Jisuk, but this time again, he predicts him and smacks his face so hard that he fell to the ground. He exclaimed this was too easy for him and he has made time to come there. In-hyuk thinks Jisuk didn't put a lot of strength into an attack, but it was still a big show to Jiwoo. But after a while, they get shocked that he gets up from his place and his stamina must be greater than their prediction. He is again ready to fight and this time, he will attack first. After 2 or 3 failing attempts, he successfully hits Jisuk. He gets angry and tries to match up his speed and completely adjusted himself to Jiwoo's speed, but this time Jiwoo dodges him and increased his speed too. Kaden smirks as the other kid is pretty strong, but it is not enough to match Jiwoo at his best. Jiwoo is happy that everything is going the same as Mr. Kaden told him while everyone is in a state of shock. Now, Jisuk gets angry and he is overdoing this, but Jiwoo can get seriously hurt. He attacks him with so much force that Jiwoo's body feels like it's shattered. He prepares for his last attack, which gives him a lot of pain, but he again gets up and is ready for another round. Jisuk is shocked at how he can still get up. In-hyuk asks him to give up, but Jiwoo says he can still fight. Jisuk thinks he has to attack him harder this time to put him down, and he starts to increase his energy. Now everyone wants to see how Jiwoo performs, but if they continue, Jiwoo might get hurt pretty badly. In-hyuk concludes the fight that it will be too dangerous to continue and that will be all for today, while Jisuk thinks they are just trying to protect the kid. Jiwoo exclaims he can still continue, but In-hyuk says he has done extremely well. This is all for today, but he affirms to fight with him. Jisuk states Jiwoo can learn from this opportunity to get to know his limits, and they all wonders if is there something special about Jiwoo. They start fighting and Jisuk attacks him, but Jiwoo dodges him. His speed is really impressive and Jisuk wants to not let him come near him so that his speed gets slower. When Jiwoo comes near him, he made a wall around himself and shows him the difference between them by saying he can't beat him. He then attacks him with the wind wall, which seriously hurts Jiwoo. The chairwoman orders In-hyuk to take Jiwoo to the treatment center, but they are shocked when Jiwoo again gets up and says that he can still fight. In-hyuk understands his feelings, but he can't let this fight continue. But Jiwoo says he can take care of himself and that he still wants to continue and he is going to fight till the end. It is difficult for him to stand. Also, his skin stings and hurts like it's been cut with a knife, and his body feels like it has been hurt by a car. In-hyuk tries to convince him by saying it's not too late, but he doesn't want to give up, while Jisuk gets stronger than before and attacks him with so much power. He says he doesn't want to torture him, so he will end up with this attack, while Jiwoo is getting scared now as to how bad it will be if he gets hit by a stronger attack. He remembers when Kaden advised him to store his energy for the last attack. That is the only way he can win against him. Now, this is the time to use his stored energy, as it is now or never. When Jisuk attacks him, he reaches to him and puts all his power into one attack, and blasts him away. Jisuk falls to the ground to a far place and Mr. Kaden appreciates him for his performance. Jisuk got screwed by that kid and thinks he had the ability to move like that, but kept it hidden all this time. Currently, he is not in a condition to move anymore and he thanks Jisuk for the fight. He is in the hospital and thinking about his defeat, but he is not frustrated or mad like last time. Instead, he feels peaceful. Mr. Kaden is sitting beside him, and he tells him that he feels like a real awakened now. He is training his abilities while lying down when Mr. Kaden feels someone's presence, and asks him to stop. The chairwoman and In-hyuk come to visit him and they inform him that he slept for 2 whole days, but he still feels a lot of pain and is unable to move. In-hyuk reveals that his 5 ribs are fractured and 4 more have cracks in them, while Mr. Kaden thinks this is not something he needs to worry about too much. In-hyuk again wants to touch that round and chubby wobbly body of Mr. Kaden, but he has to hold it on. The chairwoman asks him if he ever heard the name Kaden, and they are all shocked that she suddenly asks him about Kaden. Mr. Kaden thinks that she feels that the energy Jiwoo used at the end was related to him, but she is a lot more sensitive than he thought. Jiwoo replies he never heard this name before and doesn't know anything about him. She then asks him about his cat's name and Jiwoo was so confused that he uttered casein nitrate, which is not liked by Mr. Kaden. She exclaims his cat always stays by him and has a very unique name. On the other hand, Wooin is released by the Union, however, he will be under observation. He asks them about the professors and they reveal that he has to face the consequences of breaking the rules. When he goes to school, he notices Jiwoo is absent and wonders what did happen to him. He asks a student about him and he reveals that he is absent for a few days. Come to the Jisuk. He is annoyed to think about Jiwoo and wants a rematch once he gets better. The chairwoman reveals that in Jiwoo's final move against Jisuk, his attacks seem to have traces of electrical abilities, and In-hyuk leaves the room by saying he will report her soon. Mr. Kaden is angry with Jiwoo because he told his weird name to them. Suddenly, he notices someone is approaching them at a great speed and that they are not running but using their ability to approach them at an extreme speed. The door opens and there is In-hyuk on the other side and says he came back to check something. He is starring Mr. Kaden and Jiwoo thinks he gets to know about him, but he gives them a lot of snacks and toys for Mr. Kaden. He then goes to the chairwoman and apologizes and informs her that he went to give gifts to casein nitrate. On the other hand, Jisuk's friends are bullying Wooin, but this time he beats them up. He asks them what they did with Jiwoo and beat them well. One of them says Jisuk was the one who took him and they don't know what happened to him. Meanwhile, Jisuk reaches there and asks him why he beat his friends. While lying on the bed, Jiwoo remembers about other kittens at home. They have not been fed for several days. Mr. Kaden tells him that In-hyuk daily goes to his home and fed the kittens. On the other side, Wooin and Jisuk are fighting and Wooin is surprisingly very fast and asks him about Jiwoo and Jisuk tells him that he checked into the hospital a few days ago. Wooin attacks him but they are both at almost at the same level. Wooin wonders who he is as he is too powerful and extremely fast. Meanwhile, a member of the committee comes there and asks both of them to stop, and Jisuk is now realized that he is awakened. Woo-in thinks he has put Ji-woo in the hospital with his abilities. They both want to fight each other when In-hyuk comes there and says they can use their facility to fight. He takes them to the facility and informs the chairwoman that the committee members wanted to battle Jisuk, but since it is better to battle indoors, so they decided to bring them there. While In-hyuk and the committee member also seem to be in a mood of fighting. Meanwhile, they both start fighting without asking them, and Woo-in attacks his first. He somehow manages to dodge him. Jisuk then attacks him, but he is unable to guess the direction of Woo-in's attacks. He is pretty strong and holding his own up against Jisuk. His awakened ability is telekinesis, and In-hyuk guesses he has learned this style from the professor. Gradually, it is becoming hard for Jisuk to dodge his attacks so suddenly. He increases his speed and strikes Woo-in this time. He attacks him again and again while Woo-in didn't get time to be stable and falls to the ground. Suddenly, Jisuk feels some pressure on his neck and Woo-in attacks him from his place, which makes him fall. The committee member was also impressed by his powers, and he remembers when the professor asked him to not let him live by himself, and he now gets that he is so powerful. The attack by Woo-in hurts Jisuk's pride, as this is the first time he is fighting with someone of his age and almost lost. Woo-in attacks him, but it doesn't have any effect on him as he is using wind to protect himself. This time, Woo-in gets seriously injured by his attacks. Meanwhile, Ji-woo and Kaden are watching their fight from a side, and they are being called by Jisuk. Woo-in is shocked to see him as he has been hurt so badly that he can't even walk on his own. He gets so furious to see him and attacks Jisuk with so much power that even his wind wall couldn't protect him. The committee member wonders how the professor managed to train such a powerful awakened, and Ji-woo is unable to understand the reason for their fighting. They are attacking each other with so much intensity that it is hard to believe that there are just teenage awakened ones fighting. In-hyuk thinks if they continue like this, then they will both get seriously injured. They both go to both of them and ask them to stop. Kaden is unhappy because it was getting exciting for him, but they both want to continue fighting. In-hyuk asks Woo-in why he wants to fight Jisuk that badly, but he looks at Ji-woo instead of answering. They guess that he is fighting with Jisuk because of Ji-woo, and this is not the first time he and his friends have been bullying him at school, while In-hyuk and the chairwoman now learn that he bullies the students in the school. Ji-woo states that Jisuk didn't do anything to him and he was the one who wanted to fight him in the first place. Also, Jisuk has called him there. He wanted to show him in person how powerful his awakened abilities are. That was his luck that he managed to hit him, and In-hyuk is shocked that he brought an injured patient to gloat about his abilities. After some time, they both are in the hospital beside Ji-woo, and In-hyuk asks them to stay there until they monitored their health. In-hyuk and Mr. Seong-ha wonder why the chairwoman insisted on keeping those three in the same room while Jisuk and Woo-in are constantly causing trouble, and she replies they should hang around each other for the preparation of the upcoming event. In-hyuk says they don't want to take Woo-in off to the committee's hands, but Seong-ha reveals he is officially registered under their management. Meanwhile, In-hyuk receives a call from Ji-woo and he tells him that they both started fighting again. They both are fighting while playing cards and ready to attack each other when In-hyuk and Seong-ha reach there and scold both of them. Mr. Kaden again dislikes their interruption as he thinks they will learn eventually if they let them fight it out. In-hyuk says casein nitrate is not too bothered by all this, and Jisuk says that the cat seems to eat way too much and is too fat. But In-hyuk gets angry about this and grabs him by the shoulder and asks if cats are not allowed to have big appetites, and he also eats a ton as well. He then takes out candies that he brought for Mr. Kaden. They are all shocked to see his mood swings. Ji-woo asks him if he can go home as he is missing his cats. When he agrees, then he asks Mr. Seong-ha if he can take Woo-in with him. They reach home and Woo-in is shocked to see his love for the cats. Ji-woo shows him the cat that was used by the professor as a sample and that he is doing better now. Jisuk asks him why there are so many cats, and Ji-woo says the house has gotten messy since he had been gone, and In-hyuk offers to help him. Jisuk asks Ji-woo why casein nitrate always gives him annoyed like whenever he sees him, but In-hyuk again grabs him by the collar and asks him how he can say that about a cute fat cat and thinks he is now bullying cats. After that, In-hyuk tells the chairwoman that they are all sleeping at Ji-woo's house and will come for a checkup tomorrow, but she wonders how Jisuk gets ready to sleep there. On the other hand, Jisuk also wonders why he is staying up there, while Ji-woo just keeps laughing as this is the first time he has ever had friends over. Ji-woo asks Woo-in if he ever slept over at a friend's house, and this is his first experience too, as he always traveled with the professor since he was young. Woo-in sees a dream when he transfers many school due to the professor, and other children did not talk to him as they think he had some problems, so that he mostly transferred schools. One day, he came back home when the professor was experimenting on a cat, and when he inquired about other animals, he revealed that they all died and he was the only cat left for the experiment. The professor left for a few hours and asked him to take care of the cat, but he took pity on the cat and let him go. When the professor came back, he told him that the cat had died and he buried him in the hill out back. This was the first time he lied to the professor, but relieved that the cat can live a free life. He gets up and wonders why he dreamt about the early days. Meanwhile, Jisuk also gets up and he is feeling so uncomfortable and leaves the house. Jiwoo gets up and asks about Jisuk and he tells him that he left. After that, Wooin also gets up and leaves the house too. When they had left, Mr. Caden feels relaxed because he couldn't talk when they were around and had to watch his actions. While on his way to school, he feels so refreshed and is feeding all the cats on his way. A man with 2 big dogs comes up there and asks Jiwoo why his cat is too fat and what he gives him to make him so fat, while Caden thinks he should have changed into a dog but not a fat cat. Mr. Seongha tells the professor about the fight Wooin with another awakened, and he is not believing him because he thought Wooin was a well-mannered child. Mr. Seongha says he must have been very obedient in front of him, but he witnessed that he was a rebellious and stoic kid. He asks him to advise Wooin to not do this as he will just listen to his mentor, but Professor refuses to do so. The next day, when Jiwoo goes to school after feeding all the cats, Mr. Caden starts to restore his powers and peace, but the other cats come there and start teasing him. When he reaches school, Wooin was already there and he sits up with him. While his way back home, Mr. Seongha asks Wooin to join the union, and by joining it, he can stay with the professor, which gives him some time to think about it. On the other hand, Jisuk's friend is unable to contact him and they are talking each other that they took money from other school kids by taking Jisuk's name, and Jisuk hears all of their conversations and is in a state of shock. Meanwhile, Jiwoo also comes there and hears their conversation too, and asks them if Jisuk knows that they took the money. He asks them how they can do this when they are Jisuk's friends, while Jisuk leaves without saying anything. While coming back home, Jiwoo asks Wooin to go to his home as the kitty wakes up this morning, and when they reach there, Jisuk was outside his house. He came there because In Hyuk will pick up all of them from there and they have to visit the hospital for the checkup. When they go inside, Mr. Caden tells him that he is waiting for an hour, and he is surprised that he waited too long for him. When the cat sees Wooin, he again started shouting and Jisuk is shocked that he is snarling at Wooin. But Mr. Caden comes up there and keeps his paw on his head and the cat suddenly calms down. He has brought snacks for the cats and gives them all, but asks Mr. Caden to act cute if he wants a snack, which is making him angry. On the other side, In Hyuk informs the chairwoman that the Klein brothers have been spotted in their country, and the union is also looking into their reason for being there. Meanwhile, Jisuk enters there and asks In Hyuk why he didn't pick them up, and he has to pick them up at the hospital. On the other side, the committee members find 2 dead bodies of their members and they seem to have attacked while searching for the Klein brothers. They reach the place where Professor was being stayed, but when they went inside, there was no one there. One of them asks others to tell their contact that the information they sent was wrong and that if they want to live, they have to send the right information. The next day, Jisuk, while sitting in the class, orders food for cats and he wants to bow them down to him when his friends came to him and ask him why he is not answering their calls, but he doesn't reply to any of their questions. After that, he just replies to them that he broke his phone and used his sister's phone and leaves them there. When they were going home, Jiwoo asks them to go with them as he is going to feed some stray cats, and they somehow went with him. In Hyuk informs the chairwoman that the agents tailing the Klein were killed badly and now Seongha is after them himself. Suddenly, a man comes there and brings a parcel in the name of the chairwoman. It was from the highest rated site for buying cat merchandise and thinks she has ordered this for him. When Wooin gets back home, he finds the door is open and Klein's brothers was still there waiting for him. They ask him about the professor, but Wooin runs to hide. One of them was behind him and they ask him to do whatever they say, otherwise they will kill him. They again ask him where the professor is, but Wooin attacks them and tries to run from there, but he blocks his attack with just a little notice. He says his awakened abilities are similar to the professor and they are sure that he is his student. Wooin thinks they know him and his abilities, but he doesn't have any idea who they are. However, he can't let them catch him and attacks them, but they again block his attacks easily. Their method of attack is that first they concentrate their energy and then materialize their attacks. They are too much strong than him and use their abilities so effortlessly, and Wooin gets so injured. First, they want to get rid of him, but one of them suggests selling him as he will be in high demand for being so strong at such an age. On the other hand, Seongha is trying to track them, but they had not left any trace when suddenly he receives a call, and an agent informs him that they are unable to contact Wooin. Jisuk is at Jiwoo's house when In Hyuk calls him and asks if Wooin is with them, but he replies he has left them 3 hours ago. Jiwoo gets up and says he is going to check on him as he is worried about him. Jisuk also accompanies him, but when Jiwoo picks up Mr. Kaden, he asks him the reason why he is taking Fatty with him, while Jiwoo replies so that he would be able to find Wooin by his scent. They go to the place where he lives, but no one was there. They are shocked to see his room and wonder how he can live in a place like this. Meanwhile, the committee members reach there and ask them what are they doing there, and Jiwoo replies that they have come to find Wooin. They find traces of awakened abilities being used, and it is proved that there had been a great fight. Jisuk calls in Hyuk and informs him about the situation, and Mr. Kaden is also certain that Wooin was attacked there. Jisuk says the cat should find Wooin by the smell of his blood, but Mr. Kaden thinks that is ridiculous as he is not a dog. On the other hand, Klein's brother tied Wooin up and asks him to give up and tell them about the professor, and is torturing him with the flame of fire. Suddenly, the other one brings a member of the union who was sniffing around there, and they think they should leave the place as soon as possible. When they are changing the place, Jiwoo and Jisuk find them, and they immediately call in Hyuk and tell him everything. But if they wait for the rescue team, it will be so late, and they have to do something before they move. Hence, Jisuk decides to attack them. Jiwoo shouts from his place and calls Wooin that they have come for him. Klein's brother asks him if the kids are his friends, while Jisuk asks them how they dare cause trouble in Shinhwa's territory. They now learn that the area belongs to Jeongyu and they really want to fight with the nation's strongest awakened one. Jisuk recognizes them and asks if they are Klein's brothers, and they wonder how the kid knows about them and tells Jiwoo that they are international criminals. But now since Jisuk recognizes them, so they can't let him live, and Jisuk also realizes that he is no match for them in powers. The only thing he can do is distract them while Jiwoo gets Wooin out of there. Jisuk uses wind powers to distract them, and in the meantime, Jiwoo uses his high speed and reaches Wooin. They are amazed at how can he moves like this. He takes Wooin and moves to a safe place and asks Jisuk to hang in there, and he is going to get back up. But one of them breaks his wind wall and reaches him. On the other hand, Jiwoo is running with Wooin and he asks him to unlock the bracelet on his wrist as it's limiting his abilities. They stay at a place and Jiwoo unlocks him. After that, Wooin asks him to go out of there as he will stay behind and fight, but he says he will fight them with Jisuk and save all of them. When one of Klein's brothers reaches there and Wooin asks him to attack him with his speed and he will cover him, while Klein's brother says if they are planning to fight him, they must be out of their minds. Jiwoo attacks him and distracts him with his speed. Meanwhile, Wooin attacks him from behind. He gets furious and attacks Jiwoo by cracking the concrete in front of him, and Jiwoo is getting scared of his attacks. He then remembers what Mr. Kaden told him, that his bad mindset could even get him killed and he can't give in to fear right now. If he falls, Wooin can be in danger, and when he reaches him, he attacks him, but Wooin dodges his attack. Klein's brother now moves toward him as he has to take care of him first. But Wooin blocks his attack and asks Jiwoo to just focus. Jiwoo is doing better than his expectations, but that is not enough. They are just buying time as they have no way to bring him down. He gets so much angry and attacks them with a lot of flames which are beyond their expectations. On the other hand, Mr. Kaden is in a pickle as he wants to help Jiwoo, but Jisuk is also in danger. He is now getting tired and the opponent is too much strong, but Hyuk has not reached there yet. And he realizes that Jiwoo is just buying time, so he made his last attacks to kill him. He is getting stronger when Mr. Kaden reaches there, but Jisuk asks him to get away. But Mr. Kaden jumps and sits on his head. He then gives him an electric shock by using his powers, while Jisuk is in a state of shock. He then tells him that he will wake up soon and he just used a portion of his energy, but he can feel his sister closing in, and then threatens him to not blab about him, otherwise he will be dead. Meanwhile, Klein's brother wakes up and doesn't understand what happened to him and thinks Jisuk did that to him, but he replies that he doesn't have a clue either. All of a sudden, Jiyoung reaches there and he thinks she was the one who attacked him and jumps to attack her, but she uses wind to block his attack. She made a special isolation by using her energy, and he asks if she is Jiyoung because she is the one who is so much powerful. He thinks if he defeats her, he can join the ranks of the world's greatest awakened. But she is terrifyingly stronger than him. Moreover, her powers are just going on increasing and attacking him, but he is unable to block her single attack and gets defeated in no time. She then asks him about the others who are in a bad condition, while Jiwoo and Wooin are unable to move their bodies. Klein's brother comes to attack him. Wooin tries to attack him, but he blocks his attack and tortures Jiwoo. Wooin asks him to stop and he will tell him everything he wants, but stop torturing his friend. He is going to attack Jiwoo when Kaden comes there and holds his hand and breaks his arm. He then tries to attack him, but Mr. Kaden kicks him and falls him to the ground. He then made a flame of electricity just like he made before with fire to attack Jiwoo and gives him an electric shock. He then begged forgiveness from him, but Mr. Caden was just started. He then put a shield to block all the noises and increase the intensity of the electricity. Jiwoo calls him by his name and asks him to stop, while Klein's brother thinks he has heard this name before, but he got a chance to kill him as his concentration is diverted. He made a lot of flames and attacks them, but Caden gives him a huge electric shock. He then says that he is leaving as things will get complicated if he is seen there. He appreciates Wooin's skills and asks him to do not brag about him to anyone and runs away. Meanwhile, Jiyoung and Jisuk reach there, and Wooin made the story that they both lost consciousness when he attacked them, and when they woke up, he was already on the floor. Jisuk finds the marks on his body the same as on the other brother, which means it is also done by Fatty, but wonders if he should tell his sister. After that, In-hyuk informs her that they have kept Klein's brothers in complete isolation and have made preparations to question them, and that they have come there for the professor. She thinks that someone helped the kids, but they are hiding the person. Moreover, she suspects that the person who helped them was Caden. After a while, Mr. Seonga comes up to thank In-hyuk for saving the life of his agent. On the other hand, the three of them are again in the hospital, and Jisuk is thinking about the cat as if it is possible for a cat to have so many powers. He then gets up and asks Jiwoo how he gets his cats, while Jiwoo replies they are all stray cats. He asks if he finds anything odd about that fat cat, but Jiwoo replies he is strangely adorable. He thinks they have no clue how dangerous the fatty is. On the other side, Mr. Caden is regretting because he has used all the power he has saved up, which means he has to stay cat for some time and can regain his energy anytime. The next day, Jiyoung calls Jisuk and asks him if he ever met Caden, but he has never met him, and wonders why she is asking about him all of a sudden. In-hyuk guesses from his expressions that he is not hiding anything. On the other side, Jiwoo went home after a day and he wants to surprise Mr. Caden. He enters the home and calls him, but he was not present there. He gets worried and thinks he may leave the house and checks him in the bathroom and basement too. After a while, he finds him in the bedroom where he is taking bath in the tub because, in the living room, other cats disturb him. He tries to get out of the tub but falls down due to his heavy weight. Jiwoo helps him to get him up and apologizes to him as Mr. Caden used a lot of his power to help them out. Mr. Caden then asks him to just focus on his training from now on because all of that hassle occurred as he is still too weak. When Wooin gets home, Seonga comes to meet him and asks him if he thought about his offer. He tries to persuade him by saying awakened ones need to be part of a group, especially individuals like him and the professor. Moreover, if he joins them, he will be living in their facility and none of this will happen again, but Wooin asks him for some more time to think about it. When he reaches the union, a boy named Subin comes to him and asks him why he is offering a boy to join the union. The next day, Jiwoo and Wooin go to school and again tell the teacher that they had an accident, and Jisuk was also with them. In-hyuk asked them to rest up and don't worry about school as he has talked to the school for them. On the other hand, Jisuk is searching for the special powers of cats, but he doesn't find anything. His friends come in and ask what was he doing with Jiwoo and Wooin in the same car, and had an accident, but he doesn't reply to them with a proper answer and leaves the class. They all are unable to understand what is happening with Jisuk as he doesn't talk to them properly, and because of that the people are not getting scared of them and they are running out of money while Jisuk hears all of their conversations. Meanwhile, a boy comes up there and they start to bully him and later find out that she is a girl. She asks them about Wooin and where she can find him, but they refuse to tell her, but she kicks one of them and tells them to answer her question. Jisuk asks Jiwoo to come to his home, but Jiwoo is surprised as he never wanted to come to his house and reach the place where Subin has beaten all of them. Jisuk doesn't respond and walks away. Later, he turns back when she has kept his feet on the head of one, and he asks her to take her feet off of him. She comes forward and attacks him, but Jisuk dodges his attack. They both start fighting and she is very powerful and has extreme force. Jisuk seems to be weakened in front of her and his attacks are also weak, while Wooin and Jiwoo wonder if they should stop them or not, and Jiwoo calls him and asks him to stop. She remembers him by his name, Jisuk Yu of Shinhwa, and he is shocked at how he knows him. Suddenly, he remembers something and asks if she is Subin Lee. They know each other as she is the granddaughter of the awakened union leader, and they both run into each other when they were little. Jisuk asks why she is making a scene there and replies she just came here to find someone, and those guys created a scene and ask him if he knows a boy named Wooin. While Wooin and Jiwoo are shocked to listen to his name, and Jisuk asks why she is looking for him, and when she doesn't reply he asks them to get out of there. When they reach Jiwoo's house, Jisuk is looking for Fatty while Mr. Caden is staring at him sitting on a sofa. Jiwoo asks them to have a seat and he will bring drinks for them. They are shocked to see Jisuk's expression as he is acting weird, but he respectfully presents candies to Mr. Caden. Wooin is worried about why the girl was looking for him, and Jiwoo asks him to be careful as she didn't seem to be a good girl. Jisuk is just watching out for Mr. Caden's expressions, and unlike other cats, he is squeezing the treat with his front paw. He wonders why Jiwoo and Wooin are not noticing anything weird about the cat. After a while, Mr. Caden gets up and asks him to follow him for a minute, and just follows what he said. He asks him why he is acting weird in front of him, and the way he is acting is unnatural. Jisuk asks him to trust him and he will not speak about the things he witnessed. Meanwhile, Jiwoo and Wooin come outside and they are going to feed stray cats. Jisuk thinks if they leave then he has to stay with that fatty alone, so he decided to go along with them. He has an idea that if Jiwoo found a powerful stray cat, then he can also find a powerful cat, and that he will train him so it can match with Fatty. Subin again comes there, and this time she recognizes Wooin. He asks her why she has been searching for him and she asks him why he rejected the offer of the union, but he says he didn't decline and just asked for a little more time to think about it. Meanwhile, Jisuk calls Seongha and tells him that Subin is bullying Wooin, and also she has created a scene in the school. She gets furious and attacks him while Wooin and Jiwoo are watching them with blank faces. She then ran off from there before Mr. Seongha comes, and also warns Wooin while leaving. After that, Jiwoo asks Mr. Caden if he belongs to a group, but he is not because he is too strong for that. He shouldn't be working for a group, rather they should work for him. Moreover, there were many groups who approached him but he turned them all down, and Jiwoo can't say anything except he is just awesome. They both talked for the whole night, and the next day, Jiwoo is yawning but he is happy with Mr. Caden. He sees Subin on his way to school and she asks him to call Wooin there. Jiwoo asks her what she is trying to do with Wooin, as he didn't do anything wrong to her, but she threatens him and asks him to call Wooin. Jiwoo refuses and says Wooin should not come there, and that he will not betray his friend. In the meantime, Wooin himself comes up there and asks her why she is threatening Jiwoo. She wanted to meet him to check his powers and that he has to fight her, otherwise she will fight his friend. Jiwoo tries to stop them by saying they should not fight in the street, they should be careful about that. After that, they go to In-hyuk and Jiyoung and ask them permission to spar at their fighting place. Jisuk is very excited to hear about their fight as it is going to be fun. Wooin is ready for the fight when Mr. Seongha comes there and says he doesn't need to fight and she will not bother them from now on. But Wooin says he wants to fight her as it is better to get this over with now. They are ready for the fight when Jisuk enters there with Mr. Caden and popcorn. He indeed wants to enjoy their spar. Jiwoo asks Mr. Caden how he reaches there and he tells him that he was wandering on the roof when he saw Jisuk going somewhere in a hurry and he follows him there. But he finds Jiyoung prickly while In-hyuk makes him feel uncomfortable. The fight has started and Subin seems very confident about her powers and thinks she will lay him down easily. But Wooin takes her down in just one attack and everyone can hear Jisuk's laugh there. He has the experience that Wooin always lands the first blow as soon as the fight begins, and Subin was just there babbling like that while she is shocked at what just happened to her. She gets up and is ready for the next attack, but Jiwoo calls her and tells her that her nose is bleeding. But she shouts at Jisoo and asks him to stop eating popcorn. They show up their powers and this time again Wooin attacks first, but she dodges him. And his attack pattern's hard to predict, and it's not just because it was a sudden attack. She then attacks him but he dodges and they are shocked that her awakened ability is ice. She then makes a lot of ice to attack him, but Wooin hits all of her attacks at once and breaks them all. She seems surprised that he is responding well, but he is still weaker than her. She attacks him with ice blocks and Wooin gets really hurt and says the Union is in a different league than him. Wooin gets up and again tries to attack her but fails and gets seriously injured. Jisuk calls him and asks him to get up. He says when he jumped at him, he was going to kill him, so what he is doing now, while Wooin says he was just figuring her out. Subin is shocked that he was hiding his powers and what she is feeling now doesn't even compare to his power a minute ago. Mr. Seongha also feels happy that he showed up his powers, and Subin also realizes that was the reason he wanted to bring him to the Union. She shows up her powers and asks him to show the skills of his that Jisuk was talking about. Jisuk asks them to just hurry because his popcorn is running out, but she attacks him and falls his popcorn, which makes him furious and he comes to attack her. This is what Mr. Caden wanted, a real fight. Mr. Seongha and In-hyuk come forward to stop them, and Mr. Seongha asks her if she has forgotten her purpose, which was to fight with Wooin. She tells Wooin that he has passed the test and is allowed to join the Union. But he refused to join the Union and says he is not looking to be part of a group. Jiyoung comes forward and asks them to clean everything before they leave, and most importantly, Jisuk has to clean up his popcorn. That night, Wooin stays at Jiwoo's house and asks him to visit the doctor, but he refuses to do so. The next morning, Mr. Caden is gaining his powers, but they are not enough to make him human and thinks he should take more time to research on them. It is Saturday, so Jiwoo is not going to school and he comes outside to feed the stray cats. They see Wooin in the street who is also feeding the stray cats. They are planning to go to some other place to feed stray cats, but they are shocked that Jisuk is already present there and is feeding the cats. He is planning to grow the cat awakened and gets scared when Jiwoo calls him. Meanwhile, Subin comes there and asks Jisuk why he is not receiving her calls, and he asks her to stop calling her. She was calling him because she wants to ask him about Wooin and she finds him with Jisuk. He asks why she is searching for him this time, but she suddenly forgets what brings her here. She notices the fat cat there and asks Jiwoo why he was with him always and admits that he is the fattest cat she has ever seen. Jiwoo states the cat lives with him and she asks him if he is a boy or a girl. On the other hand, In-hyuk informs that the date has been set for the event, and they are planning on sending Jisuk and 2 of the other members who have passed the examination, and she asks him to let Jiwoo participate through their special admission, while Union is planning to enter Wooin through special admission. Jiyoung calls Jiwoo for a meeting and Mr. Kaden is waiting for him at home. They reveal to him about the Awakened Academy and that this is the first time only the well-known will participate. 2 or 3 awakened ones that represent those groups will gather. Jiwoo says that he can't participate because he doesn't belong to any group, but In-hyuk says he can participate with Shinhwa's sponsorship. Jiyoung assures him that it will be a good opportunity for him as meeting other awakened will be helpful for him in the future. She gives him some time to think about it and Jiwoo leaves by saying that he will think about it when he gets home. After he leaves, In-hyuk informs her that Jisuk is refusing to participate and says it is too bothersome. When Jiwoo gets home, Mr. Kaden has already fed the cats, and he tells him that they bothered him too much until he gave them food. He tells him about the offer that Jiyoung gave him and Mr. Kaden reveals that they are doing a favor to him, so he advises him to accept the offer. Jiwoo thinks if he hadn't met Mr. Kaden then he would have lived a very different life. After that, he was going to school when he sees Wooin feeding the cats. He then tells him about Jiyoung's offer and he reveals that Mr. Seonga has suggested him to participate in the sponsorship of the union. But he is thinking about the offer and didn't give an answer. Jisuk comes up there and reveals he is not going to participate, but Jiwoo says he will participate and Wooin is also thinking about it. Wooin decides that he will go, and when Jisuk sees they both are going, he also decides to go. Jiyoung has invited 2 more students to participate in the academy, and they wonder why the chairwoman has allowed a non-member enter to the academy. The boy reveals that he has sent some of his fellows to Jiwoo's house to find out about him. They enter Jiwoo's house without permission while Mr. Kaden is inside but doesn't say anything. They call someone and inform him that there is no one in the house, and Mr. Kaden guesses that they are not robbers than what they are doing at Jiwoo's house. They are there to investigate Jiwoo, but he wonders who sent them there. But Mr. Kaden thinks he should leave them for now, as if he tries to figure it out, things might get worse. One of them gets annoyed by the cats and kicks one of them, but the monster cat jumps and attacks his face. The second one comes up for his help, but the monster cat attacks him too, and he gets injured. When he turns back to his partner, Mr. Kaden has taken him down and jumps on him too. They both are now unconscious lying on the floor, and Mr. Kaden's initial plan to leave them alone has failed badly. After a while, Jiwoo comes in and is shocked to see them there, and Mr. Kaden reveals that they broke into the house, rang the bell, and made sure no one was inside, and then forced their way. Jiwoo thinks maybe the government has sent them after finding out he was awakened, but Mr. Kaden advises him to call Shinhwa and asks them for help. He calls them for help, and after some time In-hyuk comes with his men. They take both of them, and he assures him that they will investigate the matter for him. In-hyuk appreciates his cats. They attacked the strangers who trespassed and guarded the house. When he gets outside, his man comes to him and informs him that one of them belongs to Shinhwa. After investigation, it revealed that they are Chairman Lee's people, who is the father of Jae-hyuk Lee, the one who has recently been appointed as the representative, and they have complaints about sponsoring Jiwoo. Jiyoung asks him to make arrangements for her meeting with Chairman Lee. They broke into his office and Chairman Lee himself comes to welcome her and takes her to his office. He then asks her the reason for her arrival, and In-hyuk asks him why he investigated Jiwoo on his own, but Mr. Lee declined the allegation by saying that he didn't complain about Chairwoman's decision. In-hyuk reveals that they have found 2 people who broke into his house, and according to their investigation, they are his people. Mr. Lee gets up and apologizes on the behalf of his son, and that he will remove Lee-hyuk from the academy's list of candidates. But Jiyoung forbids him to do that by saying the children are allowed to make mistakes. However, if something like this happens again, the adult will have to take full responsibility. After they have left, Mr. Lee asks his guard to call Lee-hyuk as he has given him such disrespect. On the other side, Jiwoo is training at home while Mr. Caden is instructing him, and his awakened powers are improving in record time. He was feeding his cats when In-hyuk comes there and says he has something important to tell him, but Ji-young is also behind him and Mr. Caden wonders why she is there. In-hyuk reveals that they have come there to talk about what happened earlier that afternoon and reveals that they belong to Shinhwa. And Ji-young apologizes to him and makes him sure that will never happen again. The next day, Yi-hyuk comes to her office and apologizes to her as his father asked him to do so. Ji-young warns him she will never forgive him if he does this again. He comes outside and Jisuk is there, but he leaves him by saying nothing. He goes to Ji-young and she asks him why he refused to participate in the academy, but they are shocked when he suddenly agrees to participate. After that, he goes to Jiwoo's house and brings a lot of snacks for the cats. He asks all the cats to line up if they want snacks, but presents Mr. Caden with respect. He notices Jiwoo is down today, and on inquiry, Wooin tells him about the people who broke into his house and that they were one of his people. He asks them why they didn't tell him about that, but he replies Ji-young and In-hyuk already took care of the matter. Jisuk straight goes to Yi-hyuk's home and they are shocked to see him there. But instead of replying, he kicks Yi-hyuk and asks him how he dares complain about his sister's decision. He again kicks his face and Yi-hyuk tries to attack him, but Jisuk dodges him and again kicks him. Yi-hyuk falls to the ground while Jisuk says his moves are sloppy and he needs more training. He gets furious and shows his awakened ability when Chairman Lee comes there and asks them to stop. Yi-hyuk tells him that he didn't start this, but Jisuk came and suddenly attacked him. Chairman Lee asks Jisuk why he is making a fuss at his company, and informs him that he has settled with the chairwoman, while Jisuk replies he will settle the matter with an apology too and bows before them to say sorry. They are all shocked by his sudden mood swings, but Jisuk argues with them by saying Yi-hyuk was also forgiven after an apology. One apology, and he got away with taking the Shinhwa chairman's decision as a joke and leaves the company. When he comes outside, In-hyuk calls him and asks him to come to the chairwoman's office right now. She asks him why he went to Chairman Lee's office and beat up his son, and Jisuk replies because they made fun of his sister, so he beat them up. Ji-young warns him to not let this happen again, and Jisuk assures her that. He then asks her about the standard for academy participation. On the other hand, Jiwoo is sad because he thinks that he is stealing someone else's opportunity when suddenly Jisuk reaches there, and they are shocked to see him late at night. Jisuk asks him to not feel sorry for participating in the academy because there is a policy that requires some independent awakened to attend, and Jiwoo is one of them, which means he is not stealing anyone's opportunity. When he gets outside, Wooin was already standing there and is worried about Jiwoo too. Jisuk tells him that he smashed up the guy who sent those intruders to investigate Jiwoo, and Wooin gives him a thumbs up for that. The next day, Jiwoo and all the other participating members are called to a meeting, and Yi-hyuk gives him a weird look because he is the reason he went through all that. The girl is shocked to see Mr. Caden and asks him if the cats are usually that big, and she guesses that Jiwoo is really nice. She introduces herself as Boyoung Choi and that she will also go to the academy with him. Yi-hyuk asks him why he is bringing his cat with him, and Jiwoo replies he was told that he can bring the cat. In-hyuk enters the room and starts cuddling Mr. Caden. He then asks all of them to take their seats, and the purpose of this meeting is to gather all of them there because he thought it would be nice for them to meet each other before the Awakened Academy, which will start soon. Ji-hyuk suggests to him that they should prepare themselves before the academy as the competition will be tough there. But In-hyuk says there will be no need for that. Ji-hyuk also reaches there after a while and sits with Jiwoo, while Yi-hyuk and Boyoung are shocked to see them together and asks if they know each other. In-hyuk asks if anyone has a question, and Jiwoo replies he has one. They both are again shocked that he calls Mr. Gu by his name as he is one of the top 20 awakened ones in the country. Jiwoo asks him if he can take his cat to the academy, while In-hyuk happily allows him that. Ji-young also reaches there and Jiwoo shouts her name from her place to greet her, and they are again shocked that he calls the chairwoman by her first name while she says he can call her however he likes, and they both are unable to understand his position there. If this is the case, it will not be easy for Yi-hyuk to mess with him, and he is also shocked that everyone is as nice to him as he is just an awakened one who has no place to go. Suddenly, he asks for a favor that he wants a spar with Jiwoo, while In-hyuk says this is not the purpose of the gathering. He then asks permission from Ji-young, but she says it will be decided by Jiwoo himself, and Jiwoo accepts the spar. Before fighting, he asks Mr. Caden if he can do this, and Mr. Caden asks him to do what he has taught him so far. Their fight has started, and Yi-hyuk confidently not Jiwoo comes from behind and attacks him, and they are shocked that his awakened ability is super speed. Yi-hyuk didn't know about his awakened ability, so he let him punch him, but now he thinks he will defeat him easily. But Jiwoo is so fast that he is unable to catch him, and In-hyuk and Ji-young are also in a state of shock that Jiwoo has made so much progress. Not only his awakened power gets stronger, but also his control and moves are incomparably better. Jiwoo has defeated Yihyuk and Jisuk happily grabs him and asks him when he improved so much as he thought of just feeding the cats all day. Yihyuk is also shocked that he has lost to a newly awakened and Jisuk made fun of losing. But he says he wants to continue the fight and calls Jiwoo to get back there. Jisuk asks him to not listen to him, but Jiwoo says he will not continue as he heard losing for guard down still counts as a loss and asks him to admit that he has won the spar. Jisuk takes a picture with him with a loser in the frame and Hyuk asks them to wrap it out. After some time, he informs Jiyoung that Jiwoo was not injured so he sent him home and Yihyuk refused to see a doctor and leaves. They are also shocked that Yihyuk, who is receiving special attention as Shinhwa's next generation awakened one, was lost by a newcomer. Moreover, Hyuk is surprised by Jiwoo's fighting skills based on his improvement rate of the awakened power and combat skills. He is way past their expectations, and it seems Jiwoo knows force control. On the other hand, Jiwoo is so much happy because he has won for the first time and did the same as Mr. Caden taught him. He asks Mr. Caden how he knows so many techniques and he replies that because he is a genius. Wooin receives a message in which Jisuk tells him about the winning of Jiwoo and the boy who sent people to his home and he smiled at this. The professor asks him why he is smiling because he has never seen him smile like that before and is happy that he has made friends. Mr. Caden is training at night and Jiwoo asks him why he is trying so hard to get stronger and he replies he wants to get stronger than anybody else. Suddenly, he feels a large amount of energy at the door and guesses that Jiyoung has come there and asks Jiwoo to meet her while he will stay there. Mr. Caden was right as when he opened the door, Jiyoung was standing there and asks him to talk for a minute. He takes her inside the home and she asks him about force control. He replies that it is a way of controlling awakened powers and he was able to do it when he was little. She reveals that force control is the method to share powers with the close ones and keeps it a secret and asks him if he knows about that while Jiwoo remembers that Mr. Caden told him to keep it a secret. He is nervous that whether he should tell her or not, but she asks him not to be nervous and keep it a secret that he knows force control. When she leaves, he comes to Mr. Caden and asks him why he has taught him such an important thing and he reveals that there were tons of people who wanted to follow him just because of the force control and it is his choice to teach him that. Jiwoo hugs him while crying and thanks him for everything he has done for him. The next day in the class, the teacher announces the summer vacations that are starting the next day, and Jiwoo entered the class when it is about to be over. Jiwoo asks him to walk home with him, and on the other side, Jisuk's friends ask him to hang out with them but he refuses to go with them. They all went shopping and buys a lot of snacks and junk food. When they reach home, Subin was already there waiting for them and asks Wooin why he refused her offer to lunch with her. Wooin apologizes for turning her down but he has made plans with them first. Jiwoo also tells her that they had planned to hang out all night at his home but